Hello, bonjour, my name is Nikki and I like to read a lot. Thank you for accepting my invitation to join me as I work my way through the 2026 PopSugar Reading Challenge in video format. If you want a more detailed explanation of what I'm doing in this video series, you can go ahead and check out my introduction video where I explain my hobby pairing experiment and review each of the 50 prompts for this year's PopSugar Reading Challenge. Next in the lineup, I finally got to read the standalone gothic horror that came out last summer called The Bewitching by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. You may have heard about this one already. It was being highlighted quite a bit during the last spooky season, and rightfully so. I put a copy on hold at the library right away after I'd read the synopsis. It's late 1990s in Massachusetts when a grad student studying horror literature, Minerva, focuses her thesis work on an obscure author who went to the same university back in the 1930s. This local author is a woman named Beatrice Tremblay, whose most notable book, The Vanishing, was inspired by the real-life disappearance of a fellow classmate while Beatrice was a student at the school. In researching elements of Beatrice's past, Minerva begins to notice strange parallels to her own grandmother's tales of witches back in 1900s Mexico City. At first, it seems like you're just weaving together the series of mysterious disappearances, yet as you go along in the story, you get more steeped in superstition and folktales. You're with each of these characters as they uncover a dark history, and the terror is not limited to the supernatural. I think this book qualifies as a dark academia, at least in my understanding. 2 of the 3 points of view take place in an academic setting, with Beatrice in 1934 and Minerva in 1998 attending the same university. The infusion of Mexican folklore from the 1900s only adds this other type of knowing to the compilation of meaning-making. There's an atmosphere of magical realism which works really well with tales of the supernatural. And while I don't think you're left questioning what's real and what's not by the end of the story, perhaps that depends on the reader. If you're a Pisces or a Taurus, you could use this book for prompt number 49, a book that mentions your zodiac sign. Other reading challenge prompts you could use this book for are prompt number 29, a book that takes place during harvesting season, and prompt number 33, a book about a college. Witches, myths, folklore, the collective unconscious, intergenerational dynamics, intergenerational traumas, and gifts. Also, there's a refreshingly open and honest exploration going on within the story around how class, race, and gender influence which stories make it into the official histories and which stories remain untold, or sometimes buried. 2/3 of the book take place against the backdrop of the northeastern United States, specifically New England, lands that hold historical significance as some of the earliest settlements to profit from Europe's colonization of the Americas. Over the past year, I've done a few deep dives to learn more about the true histories of the early British colonies. I've followed threads of my own ancestry to the roots of this settler colonial project that's now known as North America. In doing so, I can better understand and account for how I benefited from this imperialism, among other systems of dominance and oppression that favor people like myself, namely white folks. If thinking about these types of things makes you uncomfortable, you'll probably find reading The Bewitching an uncomfortable experience. And to be honest, I think that might be all the more reason for you to read it. Sometimes reading can involve learning things that make you uncomfortable, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Horror can be a really effective medium for this kind of low-key introspection, I think, because the reader's already bought into a certain level of discomfort by choosing a horror story. Anxiety, dread, fear, panic, paranoia, disgust, desperation, isolation, grief, sadness, despair. There's something comforting about having all of that on the page, a relief in having the horrors of the world externalized into this story that I'm reading. I'm using this book for prompt number 30, a travel ghost story. This prompt can be interpreted in a few ways, with some folks taking a travel ghost story to mean that the ghost moves from one place to another. Maybe it's attached to a person rather than a place, or through a bloodline or curse, while others seem to have interpreted a travel ghost story to mean a setting that suggests travel is taking place, like a hotel or motel, a cruise, a hostel. You get the picture. I've read a couple other Moreno-Garcia novels, and I remember feeling a bit ambivalent. I'm not sure what didn't click with me for Mexican Gothic because I really appreciated her subversion of a few classic Gothic tropes. It could have been just a simple mood mismatch on my end, because even though I didn't fall in love with those stories, I still enjoyed her style enough to keep trying out her other books. Moreno-Garcia's voice is dark and casually informative, kind of like blending the vibes of Shirley Jackson and Isabel Allende into something wholly her own. I'm a sucker for almost all variations of witch lore, and I was really pleased with this book. I'm looking forward to reading more of her writing. She has a noir novel set in 1940s Mexico called The Intrigue, which will be coming out in July this year. And if I don't already have it on hold at the library, I've certainly flagged it for them. Clearly, this author has experienced the highs and lows that come along with being a grad student. I've taken this into consideration with my emoji rating, and so for the Bewitching, it gets 2 magic sparkles, 1 precarious stack of books that you need for your thesis, and a long scream of terror that may or may not be related to your research. We've reached the end of my notes on Silvia Moreno-Garcia's The Bewitching. As you can see, it can be used for multiple PopSugar Reading Challenge prompts this year, and I used it for prompt number 30, a travel ghost story. Maybe you'd fancy some spooky time travel across generations. Maybe you'd appreciate an archival mystery that dips into the occult. Maybe you're also doing this year's PopSugar Reading Challenge and you're looking for ideas for your next read. Whatever brought you here, thanks for sticking around. Feel free to like if you're enjoying this journey, and subscribe to join me as I get through the next 47 prompts. So long, au revoir, see you next time.